What's up everyone, Alex here. So the topic we're going to be talking about today isn't something that I thought needed to be talked about, but so many false information is coming out of this news that I feel like I needed to revisit this because, like, even though it's been a few weeks or a few days or something like that, there's still a lot of really bad information coming out of this. And this is all about when Square Enix announced in their earnings call that they're going to cancel $140 million worth of currently in developed games that will probably never see the light of day. Some people are saying, oh, that we'll never see a new Team Asano game, we'll never see Dragon Quest, we'll never see this and that. And today I actually want to go over how we got to this point. And I think it's actually very important to contextualize this within that perspective. I also want to relate this from the perspective of a content creator, like a YouTuber, because inherently, if you really think about it, Square Enix is a content creation company. They make video games, we consume them, much like I make videos and then you watch them, much like what's happening right now. So with that in mind, let's go over the history of how we got to this point. So when Enix actually bought Square back in the day, when Square was hemorrhaging because of the Final Fantasy movie, somebody had this brilliant idea that they should increase the amount of games that were being made by the company to earn more money. Theoretically, that makes a lot of sense, right? As a YouTuber, any of you who is starting out, you're probably been told like, hey, just keep making content, just keep making content, the people will watch you, right? And for the longest time, that's been the strategy that Square Enix has had. They had 8 Squaresoft and 2 Enix development divisions, with each focusing on different sets of brands. Now, what's really weird about these groupings is that they were often spread around different places. For example, Product Development Division 5 had offices in both Osaka and Tokyo, which is weird if you're making the same game and you're not in the same place. That kind of makes it difficult, especially in 2003. And so they went with this model up until 2013. The reality of the situation, as you remember, in the PS3 era, Square Enix was barely around during that time, and their presence wasn't felt as much when compared to the PS2 era. And it's because of this infrequency of game creation that Square Enix decided in December of 2013 to split these 10 companies into 12 business divisions. But the goal of making more and more games was still around. But despite this division, these 12 business divisions didn't come out with a game every single year or every other year. In fact, game creation has just continued to slow down. They kind of recognized that this was a problem, and it took them like at least over a decade to realize this. And so in 2019, Square Enix announced that all 11 of their business divisions would be consolidated into 4 units by 2020 with a new name, Creative Business Units. And even though they said that they were going to consolidate it into 4 units, eventually we got 5 creative business units out of it. But the overall strategy of making more games never changed. This was all actually a really good idea, because what this resulted is the massive amount of games that have come out ever since that merging. We saw the most of that in 2022 when we got Harvestella, Voice of Cards, DioFailed Chronicle, Star Ocean The Divine Force, Valkyrie Elysium, Triangle Strategy, and of course the remake of Live Alive. That's a lot of games already. Now, keep in mind that over the past 10 years, video games have changed, right? We're talking like when Enix bought Square, mainstream hits weren't even a thing up until maybe a couple or so years after that purchase. So basically what they're doing is they're literally applying the same strategy that they had when Enix bought Square, like more than 10 years later, thinking like, if we just make the games, people will, come, right? But as many of you know, as, watchers of YouTube videos and stuff, just because your favorite creator makes something, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna watch, all of their videos, right? Especially like, for example, if your favorite YouTuber comes out with like a video every single day, there's like no way to catch up with what's going on. And that's exactly what happened with us in 2022 when all of those good games came out. It was just so overwhelming that even fans like couldn't figure out like, how are you guys able to come out with so many dang games? Like we can't even we don't even know a lot of this stuff. And so this recent news, like Kiryu, who's like the CEO, I think, and of course the board of directors kind of agreed and said like, hey, this is kind of crazy, right? Like we're literally making games for the sake of like a strategy that hasn't been applicable in the industry for the past 10 or 15 years. Like we need to be a bit smarter when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so to kind of give you an idea of what it actually says in the earnings call, it says to revise the group's approach to the development of high definition games with the intention of being more selective and focused in the allocation of development resources. So in other words, it's not haphazardly just making things for the sake of making things. Like they're really going to take their time to be smarter about what they release, and perhaps maybe, and here's a possibility, revive old franchises that haven't seen the light of day, right? Keep in mind, I'm not saying that what they did in 2022 and delivering all of those games is bad. I mean, I enjoyed a lot of them. Live Alive was a great game, right? Like the fact that we finally got Live Alive is a great example of that. But think about, again, your favorite YouTuber like making so many videos a day. Like if they made like 14 videos a week, right? That's kind of crazy. And Square Enix is kind of doing the same thing. The YouTuber equivalent of this is like a YouTuber basically saying, okay, I noticed my audience loves top 10 lists. They also love my reviews. I'm going to make those, and I'm going to be selective in which games to review. That way, like I know what they actually like to watch, right? Because oftentimes than not, the bombardment of so much like good stuff can also be a bad thing. And now finally, literally like almost 2 decades later, somebody at Square Enix said, oh, let's calm down. Let's actually be really smart about this, because you're actually also thinking about resources and time. Much like video games also need the right marketing resources. Like how many of you people have actually like said like, oh, Harvestella didn't get marketing? Well, that's one of the reasons why, is because they were so like kind of spread thin that they didn't even know where to spend their money. So with this particular instance, they can actually properly support with the right capital to push out a game and be like, well, we will put some importance in that game's marketing. Like the upcoming like Visions of Mana, for example, they're actually going to put some marketing into that now, because they know that, there's not like a, I don't know, Diofield Chronicle that's coming out in the fall that needs like a little bit of a slice of like marketing or something. Like they can actually focus all their time and energy and resources to really highlight the games that they want to highlight during that time period. And I think that's really super important. Now, for a lot of people, this also spells like doom somehow, that some of their favorite franchises and, development companies wouldn't be able to do what they want to do, like Team Asano, for example. But given the appointment of Asano-san in a high-ranking executive director position, I actually don't think that's the case. I actually think we're going to see a lot smarter uses of Team Asano's production chops. Like, Triangle Strategy was actually a pretty good hit. Octopath Traveler 2, despite people saying, oh, it's a flop, it doesn't take a lot of money to actually make that game. They actually made their money back then. I'm pretty dang sure. And again, they won't appoint somebody like Asano-san an executive position if he wasn't seen as like an important part of the company. I am pretty sure like he still has a lot of pull in there, therefore his games have a lot of importance. So we can definitely expect to see more, Team Asano games in the future. Dragon Quest 12, some people were saying like, oh, it's probably canceled because we haven't seen anything on it. No, they're just working on it. Dragon Quest is considered by Square Enix as one of the pillars of Square Enix. I mean, Enix bought Square, Dragon Quest money, for crying out loud. They're always going to be supporting, like a franchise like Dragon Quest, much like, Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, and all these other IPs underneath that is still going to be supported. Neo, The World Ends With You, which came out, during that time period that I'm talking about, or even think about bringing stuff from the past and maybe reviving those brands. And I think this is actually a really smart idea. That way, again, the right number of eyes are actually seeing it, people are going to try it out. And I really do think that this move is going to help Square Enix in the future. Now, obviously, like, I have to bring up the fact that there's been a lot of talk about like blockchain and all that stuff. I don't really know how that's going to play into Square Enix's future. But what I can be certain is that this news that they're basically taking a hit of like $140 million for games that are going to be canceled right now, you know, probably is a really, really good thing, especially if, you know, those resources can be allocated towards games that really, really do need those resources, like Visions of Mana coming out. Like, how many people actually know of the Mana series this time around? It's, you know, a franchise that hasn't seen a lot of attention like being given to it over the past like decade or so, like outside of like mobile games and ports and stuff like that. So this is really, really important. And I just want to say the industry always moves like in rapid succession, right? And seeing Square finally recognize that they can't just make games and expect people to play them like in the PS2 era. Like, because I was kind of like that. I was like, oh, the PS2 era is like, you know, the golden age of Square Enix. Like, they'll just make like a bunch of games and everything will be good, right? Times have changed, and I'm glad that Square Enix is actually acknowledging it, if only because we'll get a lot more of the really, really good games that they've delivered over the past few years, and maybe Bravely Default 3. I'm expecting them to announce something like that over the next, you know, year or two, because, and you know, apart from the fact that there'll be like Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D, I'm pretty sure that that's also still in the pipeline, because that's both a Team Asano gig and of course a Dragon Quest thing. It's the merging of two worlds, merging of their two kind of like big franchises, almost like kind of working together to make a really good, in my opinion, it's going to be a really good HD 2D title. But I want to hear what you think. I've babbled on for like almost 13 minutes now. Post your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. And if you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I almost flubbed that one. And, you know, let your friends know about this, because I think this little history lesson and what it means is going to be a positive for Square Enix moving in the future. And, you know, honestly, for all you turn-based fans, this is also good news for you as well. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.